It's very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
And I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Keep that crowd warmed up. Is Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the 14th episode of the Warcry podcast. I'm your host, Jehovah Tiger. Just chilling. Nothing too crazy. It's a very warm Sunday. I guess not morning, noon. I guess is when I'm recording today. I kind of wanted to record the day I posted this episode because I wanted to see if some people would send me some stories. And so this episode is going to be basically about listener stories, but the name of this episode is called This is Creepy. Because some of the stories I'm going to share with you guys today, I'm not going to lie, are pretty creepy. Like, beyond kind of creepy. Like, I would say you probably, if you are one that gets scared kind of easy, I would not listen to this episode at night. I've talked on, Unsolved Mysteries of the Reservation, which that episode just came out this past Friday. That was Winter Spirits. That was a pretty epic episode, because sometimes you just don't think of those things, and you don't think of, how that, those things affect us. But, I mentioned this, before, on the podcast. Basically, I've had things happen to me when I'm, listening to the podcast or re-listening to it. So if you're a little bit scared, you're kind of like, this is going to be pretty spicy, pretty good, pretty spooky. So I would advise, if you listen to this in the middle of the day, if you are that person. But so I had been kind of, asking around, so I moved. Everybody knows that. Episode 11. I think it's episode 11. Anyways, yeah, Bob Ross episode. So I moved, and so I've been trying to kind of find my way in the community, and I'm starting to ask questions about things, and just want to know some things because I'm curious by nature. And I was talking to somebody, and we got on the topic of like demons, and the story that they told me. I've heard this type of story before, but to me, this one's kind of this one's pretty crazy. So he had been this person had been kind of an atheist their entire life, didn't really believe nothing, and he kind of goes through some tribulations and some things that happens in his life, and he ends up finding a higher power, and he cannot control the excitement. So he's telling his coworkers and his employees and people around him basically just cannot contain it. How excited he is, and he goes and starts telling everybody. And one of the last people he tells is somebody who he thought he was kind of close with. And so he's telling the story of how he got here, and he looked over, and the guy that he was telling the story to had this weird kind of grin. And it was almost like that type of grin where you almost don't believe him, but he said it didn't look like a normal grin. The facial features were exaggerated. And he keeps talking, he keeps looking over, and he starts to notice that this guy's face, who he'd been working with for years, started to morph. And he didn't recognize him. But it was him, it was the guy, but the facial features did not look like him. And he said that he noticed that his voice started to change as well. And he was kind of like, man, this is, in his head, he's like, man, he's talking, and he's like, man, this is kind of crazy. Like, what's going on? So then he ends up, kind of in the name of Jesus, and basically, at a certain point, this guy doesn't look like anything like his guy his coworker. And so he says, in the name of Jesus, you tell me your name. And the guy that's, that's kind of weird, like his face is changing and stuff, says in this kind of this raspy, otherworldly voice, and said skepticism. And I thought that was crazy. I was like, what? And the guy that's telling me the story, he's like, man, I couldn't quite put into words what happened, like what I saw and heard. So once he did that, he said this, whatever this thing is, says skepticism, and then the guy that I guess it's using him slumps in the chair and closes his eyes and looks down, and then looks back up, and he's like normal again. And the guy that's telling me the story said, "Hey man, are you all right?" And the guy's like, "No." He's like, "I don't even know where I'm at. What am I doing in your office? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't even know." So he's so confused and scared. He like runs out of the office and like is trying to like grasp like where he was at, because like last thing he remembered, he was somewhere else in the facility. And he comes back. He's like, "Man, I don't know what happened. What were we talking about?" And so I kind of, with that story, I always thought it was kind of interesting, because I had, as you just knows, I always ask people, questions and stories, and a story that was told to me by somebody who I never deemed to be paranormal or that type of way. And this story was told to me about 6 years ago. And it's something similar to that story that I just told you guys. And basically this person was telling me this story about how their parent or their mom was in this like exorcist group, and they prayed over people who they thought had a demon in them. And you hear that and you're like, "Dang, that's all right. This is crazy." But I thought it was, I believe in that thing, I believe in these things. And so one day they prayed over somebody, and the next day they were going to church, and everybody's kind of, normal church stuff going on. Well, this old man, real like old looking man, walks in the middle of church right down to the front aisle, to the front pew. And they said, and people around said he stunk like death. He just smelled so bad. And they said that he kept during the sermon, "Amen, brother," being real sarcastic and, kind of being real, obnoxious, and just, "Amen," like just trying to make fun, of that thing, of that, the people that do that. And come to find out, once the sermon's over, they all go to classes, and this old man goes in this classroom with the person that's telling me this story. And they noticed that their parent, their mom, was in the classroom with them, and she could hear, and like she was back there in the back of the room with this old man was here, and you could hear faint whispering. It was like, and you could hear it, but it was almost like a prayer. And what they come to find out is that the mom was saying a prayer over the room, the classroom. All of a sudden, the lights go out, and this old stinking man, smelled like death. The lights go down, and the lights come back on, and he's gone. So I always asked about that. So, "Have you ever seen him again?" They're like, "No, we haven't." But what they think it was is that spirit that they had kind of exorcised out of this person that they did that previous day followed them to church and was trying to make a mockery of what they were doing. And so, yeah, that story right there gives me goosebumps. I think I've maybe told that a few times. I haven't really been public with that one, but I'd share it on here. But, I just found that conversation so interesting. I know we kind of went on a deep dive with investigations on Unsolved Mysteries of the Reservation. We talked about kind of investigations that Chris and I have done over our lives. Obviously, Chris has been all over the place. Mine's kind of more local, but all these, all these kind of happen in small towns, which is kind of interesting about that too as well. But, I've had so many stories told to me over the course of the last probably year. And some of them I haven't gotten to, in which I'm going to touch base on some of those today. First story that was told to me, was told to me a couple months ago. And I want to read it verbatim, because one thing I don't want to do is mess my story up, especially when I haven't really, I know the story, I just don't want to mess up the small details, because that's kind of what makes this story. So this story came in, like I said, a little bit ago, so when I was younger, my folks fought a lot. My mom had side pieces, other men on the side. My dad went to a Cherokee medicine man. I don't know who, and my mom was telling me about this later on. Well, in the fridge, she found a bottle hidden down in the vegetable drawer under, a bunch of the food. And the person goes, I guess he thought that our fat chibs wouldn't find it in there. Dang, I know, I'll be scouring the fridge, just making sure, no stone goes unturned when it comes to food. Nah, but but anyway, whatever it looked like, she recognized it as medicine right away. And the mother confronted him. He admitted it, and he said, "Yeah, I did do that." And and I changed my mind on it, and so I stopped using it. Well, I guess he was supposed to drink that potion of whatever of the medicine that he had put on him. He was supposed to drink it when he was done with it. Well, he does. He drinks it, and he has this crazy dream that he's standing by a trading post back in the old days. And some old Indian man is standing there, and he's selling stuff. He said basically all around him was almost like how it was in the old days. Like there was no paved roads. It was all like everything was still like how it was back in the old days. And it's almost like, I guess they equate it to being like a VCR, like when you rewind back, you can rewind back in time. That's kind of what happened. Well, he said the area used to be a lake in his dream, the Indian man. And so he went wading in the water that was there, and he started to notice invisible hands starting to grab him and pull him down into the lake. And so some time goes by. They're all sitting next to the TV watching those old PBS, OETA type program. And there was something about Cherokee, a woman that was on there that's talking about the people who live in the lake. And they was all sitting there and they was like, dang, he just had a dream about the people in the lake. Yeah, I always wondered that too. Like, if it's like, old ways trying to tell you something, or higher power trying to tell you something. But, they end up kind of like, dang, that's crazy. Like, that's has a kind of a connection. But, we've talked about dreams before, especially on like live streams, like on TikTok Live. And I believe dreams, I think people can see into the future and they can see in the past. But I don't think we know what we're looking at. I had a conversation with the same person with the first story I told. We were talking like, what if we dream and we dream so far ahead that we don't know where we're at because we've never been there before. And so what we're seeing is essentially not really what it is, but it's the future. And we don't know what that place looks like. And like maybe that's what we see is like the future, but like it's not how it really is because we haven't been there before. That's a good thought, but I appreciate that story. And if you know anything about the people that live in the lake, I've heard something about that in Tenkiller, a little bit about that out in Tenkiller Lake. But if you know anything about that and you heard that story and you're like, man, I think I know what you're talking about, definitely shoot me a message on Facebook or email me. My email is also on the Warcry podcast page, which I just made. But yeah, go message me, and if you know anything about that, that'd be real interesting to know if anyone has any more stories about that. But that's one thing I love about people sending me stories. It gets me thinking about things, such as like the dreams and things like that. So the next story I'm going to tell, this involves, and I know I promoted this on Facebook, but it's about 3 green orbs. And this is told by my cousin. And I don't think I'm going to share his name, even though he gave me full permission, but you never know. You truly never know. I don't want to shame anybody out, but so this story happened in 2012. He writes, I was living in Prosper, Texas, and was walking to my room, which was converted from a garage. And as soon as I opened the door, there were the 3 green orbs floating about waist high in the middle of the room. When I walked into my room, they started spinning in a circle and then flew through the roof and disappeared. Nobody else saw it. My mom was in the kitchen, which is connected to the room, and never saw any lights or any shadows from it. So fast forward about 4 years later, he's living with his grandma. And he said that they had some crazy stuff going on in the house. Well, she used to get real bad nightmares, and would wake up screaming sometimes. She said she woke up once and there was this man sitting on her bed, and she could feel the indentation of that thing sitting on her bed. She saw a lot of shadowy figures in that time, and she always thought it was her husband coming back to see her, coming back to visit. But the more he thought about it, the shadow man would not cause us the pain that they had to go through, or the torment, or the feeling scared. And about a week or so after one of these dreams she had, she ended up picking up a piece of metal out of her sandwich, which is kind of strange. And it was in the slice of bread was a wire. It turns out that she was given a bag at a powwow somewhere. It was filled with bad medicine. She had no idea who gave it to her and thinks it was slipped into her purse. So then they contacted our uncle, and it's my uncle too, because obviously we're cousins. But he told us what we needed to do, and that he was going to come over and smoke the house. During this time, my cousin had been having problems of his own. He really never told nobody about it, but he was having bad dreams too, and he was feeling real uneasy, feeling about the closet that was in that room. So our uncle comes over and prays and smokes tobacco all over the house. And when he gets done, he comes up to us and says that my closet was filled with these demons trying to come through a portal. He freaked out because I was like, nobody knew anything. No one said anything. He never said nothing. But after he was finished, it was gone. And there wasn't any more issues after that. Man, that's a great story. That's when it comes to those medicine bags. I was always told never to, if you're not from that area, or you're not from those people or from that group, you never really take that. And some people can take that as a sign of disrespect, but this is what happens. Is let's say you come and people think you're moving in a way that's not correct. With who they are, or the way they do things. That people could do that to you. And I was always told that growing up. If you ever go somewhere and you're unfamiliar with the place, you just kind of keep it moving, and you just kind of keep moving in the direction you're going, and just say decline whatever you got to do, because you just never know what people are trying to do to you, or anything like that. But like I said, that's a great story, and I appreciate him telling that. And he had a Hatman story, but I think I told that on Unsolved Mysteries of the Reservation. Basically, I had told a story at what was it? Hominy, I think. Yeah, Hominy. Dang, man, Hominy was so hot too. I don't know how I kind of got that story logical, but I had a story that basically I saw Hatman right before I was supposed to graduate, and he had been seeing that same kind of entity and being as well. And so, anyways, the next story I'm going to tell you guys, this also comes from my same cousin, or not the same cousin, same side of the family, and a different cousin, my Kiowa and Creek cousin. So there's a church that that all of our relatives in Eufaula had been going to for a long time, and this story kind of really struck me because I was always told growing up, you either choose the grounds or medicine, things like that, traditional or tradish, or you go church route, and you're not supposed to mix those things. And this story, like I said, this story comes from her mother. So back in the day, I guess you could say, they were making their, they were leaving, and they forgot something. The mother or so it'd be our great grandmother forgot something at the church. They had church service that evening, and my aunt was like, "Oh, we'll go back and get it for you. No problem. We'll go back and get it." Well, they pull up to the church, and she opens the door, and down by the pulpit, when this church isn't very long, but it's an old church, and now it's it'd be kind of newer back in the day, but at the end of the pulpit, she noticed there was a black figure, and there was somebody sitting in the chair next to the pulpit. And as she looked closer, that chair, that black figure had that person levitating. And when I heard that, to finish the story, she ended up backing out and getting out of there. And she told the story years later. But, one thing that's kind of crazy about that, is those things, there are people out there that have done those things. And I mean no disrespect to those people, because they're still around. But, I have another family member whose grandpa would float to church. They'd say, "Hey, man, you need a ride to church? We want to make sure you get there all right." And he said, "Nah, I'm all right." And next thing you know, he beat them to the church. Those things are still out there. It's not as prevalent today as it used to be. I think because everybody's got their camera phone out now. Everybody, if you saw someone kind of floating by, not even walking, just floating by fast, like, you'd be kind of like, "Oh, dang, I gotta get a picture of that or a video of that." And that might be why we don't see that anymore. But that's kind of crazy. It's a crazy story because you just truly never know what's out there, and who's doing what. But that's one thing that we always want to make sure that I do is respect those people and those people that do things and know things. I got a good laugh out of a TikTok comment one time. Was y'all are practicing bad medicine. It's like, dang, I don't even know. I was like, dang, I don't know nothing like that. I know of them, I don't know about them. And I think that's one thing that, I always try to make sure that I do respect is those people that do those things. Don't come see me. I respect you. Nah. But this episode, to me is a very good one because, like I said, it gets me thinking. Gets me thinking of different topics and different types of ideas to do with the podcast. And it also gives other people too. Like people say, "Oh man, I heard that story about that." It gives people an idea of being like, "Oh, let me tell you the story about this." And I always try to get it as close to the story as they told me as humanly possible. And if you hear this, family members or whoever, I try to read it verbatim. Sometimes I like to add a little spice to it, but it's not. The story is true, and I believe anyone that does send me stories because these things are out there, and and we want to make sure we respect them. But that's all I got for you guys today. I got like I said, threw out some stories out there. Like I said, if you're kind of a little scaredy cat, I'd listen to it during the daytime. I do want to say this too as well. Unsolved Mysteries of the Reservation. We are looking for high school or college stories, dormitory stories. Haskell, IAIA, Bacone, Northeastern State University, OU, Oklahoma State. We're looking for all stories. Sequoia dorms, Riverside, all these different schools. Fort Lewis. We are looking for stories. So if you hear this and you have a story from those schools, send me a message. We can keep you anonymous. I believe we are recording at the end of this month. And so we're going to do a college edition. So I want to make sure that story is told because we're losing a lot of those, we're losing a lot of those old Sequoia dorm stories. My grandma, I wish I had asked her more about her days there. Maybe I'll have to ask my dad, but I remember she told one story one time about a girl who committed suicide, but I can't remember the full story on why she did and what led to that or what she did, if it haunted the place. But I do have a pretty wicked story from somebody who went to Sequoia back in the old days, probably 70s. Man, it's wicked. It's a wicked story. So I can't wait to share that one, and I can't wait to share ones that are told to me. Shooting, if you got any Woodall Wildcat, Briggs, 10 Killer Schools, I'm trying to think of who else, Pegs, Kenwood, all those schools. Yeah, if you know something from those schools, like I said, shoot me a message. I'll keep you kind of on the lowdown, anonymous, and so. But I appreciate you guys listening in. Once again, we're almost at 1,500 listens, just audio listens. We're about to hit 2,500 in the total listens. And so I cannot say enough, man, how much I appreciate everybody that listens. I'm just some dude that knows some things, that says some things sometimes. And, I'm just a normal guy. If you want to add me on Facebook, Yehola Tiger, shoot me a message, make sure, I want to make sure you listen to the podcast. Here lately, I've been getting people that be posting those nasty things on their timeline. I'm trying to keep those people off. But Yehola Tiger on Facebook, TikTok, One Man Band 918. You could find this podcast anywhere. The link tree's up. There's a new Facebook page. You just type in War Cry Podcast or hit the link tree. It'll send you to that as well. I'm trying to think of what else. I think that's it. I appreciate you guys listening in, and I'll catch you on the next one.